All right, we are live. Thank you, Ebony, for starting to share this for everyone who's watching online. You're going to see some of the behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. Thank you for being, and if you're watching this as a recording, we're glad you are here. Strike, will you give me a little heads up on when we open up for good?
I say we open it. Let's go for it. We've got our panel. And we can start sharing with anybody. Get them in, make sure they're good. Hey, Devin, can you hear us okay? Nope, you muted yourself. Instead of unmuting yourself, you muted yourself.
Okay.
With the live stream to YouTube. So we are all subject to technical difficulties. All right, how's everybody doing today?
Good.
Yeah, we got everybody coming in here shortly. So the waiting room's going to open. Feel free to share. I think Ebony and team, if anybody is watching this, Ebony, are you streaming on the YouTube? So on YouTube, you're welcome to join us live in Zoom. We're about to let the waiting room in. Folks will be able to participate directly. I think all of those Zoom details are passed along on our Facebook, on our LinkedIn, etc. So please feel free to join us directly in Zoom. We've got plenty of room. We'd be glad to have you. There'll be some breakouts and some participation. It's really worth the time. So if you're able, we'd love for you to jump over and join us on Zoom. All right. CW, are we admitting from the waiting room? You ready? All right, they're coming. Let's do it.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. This is the pre-party. We'll get going here in a few moments. We just want to make sure that you are in the right place at the right time for the right thing. Very special day we've got coming at you today. Just to do a quick check, if you don't mind, if you can, if you're not in a skiff, will you click that start video icon and just give us an awkward Zoom wave hello. There will be a session later on where we will ask you to come on video for that interactive portion. You're looking right now at a bunch of the planning team. You can put the Zoom in gallery view and you can actually make eye contact with folks around. I'm going to drop a note in chat. So if I can ask everyone to go ahead and click open that chat bot down at the bottom of your screen or your device. So glad you're here today. If you don't mind renaming yourself with your go by, if you want to let us know where you're calling in from today, that'd be great. And then we do have a pre-party word cloud that we'll create in real time. For those of you just joining us, welcome. I'll drop a note in chat here in a moment. I'm going to stop talking to let someone else warm up their voice.
General Minihan, welcome, sir. Good to see you.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Coming from Scott Air Force Base. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you. Good morning.
Wednesday. How's everybody else doing this morning? Kevin, it's good to see your face.
It's great to be here. I'm glad this event's going on. Glad to dial in. I'm making dinner while I do, so I'll probably drop off video for a little bit, but glad to see you guys.
No harm, no foul. Come as you are. And anybody else, you're welcome to come on video. We ask that if you're going to, once we do the breakouts, if you can use your video, at least check and make sure it's working. But we're glad to have you all. You'll see most of us are go by name. And as fit, you'll see us more formal. But you're welcome to come as you are, in uniform, out of uniform, go by, or whatever you'd like us to call you for the day. We're glad to have you here.
All right, I'll jump back in and grab the mic. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome. I will drop a note in chat. It's got a couple of ideas for you. As you test out your video, you can click that start video function. You can have that come up. If you want to click the reactions tab, let us know how you're feeling today, what's going on in your world today, what image or what little emoji that you'd like to send across. We will build a word cloud in real time. So if you click that link in chat, you'll be able to see that right there. If you look around the screen in gallery view, you'll start to see people change their names. And if you want, we could do go by and then the location that you're calling in from. How do you change your name? Super easy. If you hover over your video block, there's 3 little dots up on the top right-hand side. Click the 3 dots, scroll down, rename. Those of you on a device, give me a thumbs up if you're on a device. Go down to the bottom of your screen, click participants. You'll see your name, tap, and then you can rename yourself. Delighted you're here. We've got about 3 minutes or so before we're going to start formally with the program. Just want to do a little bit of a welcome to everybody who's just joining us right now. If you look around the screen and you see someone you know, you can wave, or you get a picture with them. In gallery view, you can actually move the little video boxes around. So oftentimes I'll move the little video box around. I'll snap a quick picture. I'll say, hey, look who I worked with today. Little Zoom hack behind the scenes. Strike, back over to you.
Hey, we're just excited to have everybody here with us today. I know we've got a lot of volunteer team. Awesome to see so many familiar faces. Like I said, we're going to get started here in about 5 minutes. Please just take the time, that Mentimeter that JW shared in the chat. We'd love you to take a moment to just share some of your inputs to that, and that'll be something that we'll be discussing with the panel as well.
To the FIT team, I'm looking around as names show up and as cities show up. And what I know about what's going to happen today are there going to be people who have been following FIT since the beginning. We're also going to have some folks who just found out about FIT this morning. So everybody, for wherever you are joining us, not just physical location, but also where you are on that mental and emotional journey, we're so glad you're here today. If you want to send that link out, we got a couple of friends. We got room if you want to bring a couple of friends by. And then just know, and if everybody could smile toward Ebony over there, she is live broadcasting this to our friends in YouTube. So welcome, everyone. One little shout out as we're getting a few more people to join us today to the FIT team. We have got folks CONUS, we have got folks OCONUS. What a joy to see so many people's faces showing up on the screen. For those of you just joining us right now, on the bottom of your device or your monitor, if you go ahead and click that little Start Video tab, I've got you all in gallery view, and then I keep moving your video blocks around so I can look towards the little green dot. So it looks like I'm making eye contact with you, but I can actually see a few folks in my peripheral. Welcome. I'm going to drop a note in chat. Again, for those of you just joining us, and this is a repeat, so just know that I'll probably repeat myself a couple of times. But in chat, if you don't mind taking a look at that, if you want to rename yourself, go by, and location you're calling or dialing in from. And then we have a Mentimeter word cloud that we're literally building in real time. And I've had 9 of you click that link and add a word or 2 to the first prompt. Strike, it's 32, depending on what time zone people are in. I'll throw the mic over to you, ma'am.
All right, thanks JW. For everybody joining us today, we're so grateful to have you here. The first 15 minutes or so of this, we're going to allow you, you'll see the team is going to eventually pin a few of us. We have a 6-person panel here today, and we're going to kick things off. We're going to share a little bit of why we're here. And then we're actually going to create some breakout rooms to allow you all to kind of follow and have some of the same conversation we're going to be having. You can come back and watch us later on the recording on YouTube, because we're going to continue to have the rest of this discussion with that live audience in YouTube, but everybody who's able to join us here today, and you do have a last ditch chance. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can join us over in Zoom. You'll be able to have these discussions yourselves in small groups. Fortify the Force. So I'm one of the 3 co-leads for the Fortify the Force initiative team as a volunteer. Our team is all volunteers. We are hosting this today, but we have people from kind of all walks of life here joining us today. Our team is an initiative team championed by Simsaf Bass and Simsif Toberman. We kicked off October of 2021. And this isn't the first time we're doing this, but we're kind of changing the game a little bit. Just over a year ago today, we held a virtual symposium that was 2 days of really incredible panel discussions that were formatted very similarly to this. A 2-day symposium is a lot, and it's really hard for people to participate in something like that. But doing it the way we did it and opening up some of that dialogue was something that was very important to us, very meaningful to the folks who participated. And we realized that that's something we haven't been doing in the same way over the course of the last year. So what we're going to try, and you guys are we're very happy to have you as kind of our first one. We're going to start doing this every month. And instead of feeling like we have to do 2 days or some extensive symposium that you all have to make the time for, we're going to be here. We're going to be here once a month. Next month, we'll be focusing on trauma with PTSD Awareness Month. And this month, we're focusing on mental health. So you see our panel that is here with us today is a range of folks. I am not going to introduce them. They're going to introduce themselves. As we go through the course of the day-to-day, a couple things just we'd like to share. You are going to go into panel discussions. You're going to be here with us, and you're welcome to stay with us a bit after we do the formal piece of this. We just ask that you're able to respect each other's perspectives and opinions. With Fortify the Force, something that's very important to us in these really difficult conversations is that we are able to have opposing views and perspectives and learn from them, and to do that respectfully, but be willing to disagree or to share a perspective that maybe directly opposes or is very different to one that you've heard, to try to broaden all of our perspectives on a subject and not to be afraid of some of the harder parts of these conversations. We're here as an initiative team trying to drive change through proposals and pilot programs, et cetera. But today we're just here to hold a space for a conversation that is very important to us and help us all just realize this is a conversation we can have. You'll see we have 4-star general, we have enlisted, we have officer, we have a number of folks that are patient perspective, provider perspective, command team. Some of the members of our team were a part of a mental health first encounter initiative who brought together an incredible range of perspectives from patients, providers, and command teams to help improve that mental health first encounter. And they're here today having had some of these very hard discussions across groups of humans that don't always have the chance to have it with each other. So we're excited to invite you into that with us. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pass it over to our first panel member, and we're just going to go through. You'll hear a different kind of introduction from us to keep it a little bit quicker. We ask our teams, and you're welcome to do this in your small groups as well, to just kind of share their background by sharing about 10 words that represent who you are or experiences you've had that define how you interact with the world. A little bit quicker way to describe your background, but also we'd like to hear some of those meaningful things as it relates to the topic of mental health. And I'm going to first pass it over to Cody Cardinal, one of our panel members, to get us started. Cody.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, everybody. My name is Cody. I'm an active duty airman, husband, brother, uncle, dad to 3 dogs. If they bark and I have to mute myself quickly, that's why. I have an anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, social phobia, ADHD, and autistic tendencies. And in spite of these things, or maybe even because of them in some ways, I've had a successful career and I have a thriving family. And that's why this is important to me. Over to Jen.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jen Cox. I'm an active duty member, but soon to be a retiree. That's one of my favorites. I have chronic PTSD. I've had work and personal trauma, severe depression and anxiety. I'm a caregiver. I'm a people pleaser. I'm an Air Force wounded warrior, and I'm a mom to a kid with suicidal ideation and autism. And I'm so happy to be here today because I think, in my opinion, mental health saved me, the help that I got. And I believe in this process and having conversations. The more we have these kinds of conversations and share our experiences, the more we kind of we normalize it to make it so it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be struggling with this. So that's why I'm here. And I'd love to pass it over to Ben.
Thanks, Jen. Hey, I'm Ben. I am an active duty aviation psychologist. What that means is I left the med group and I'm in bed directly with aircrew. I don't like necessarily the model of come to us, we should be going to you. I went to school for forever. So I try to take an evidence-based approach to my life, meaning that pretty much my actions and interventions are grounded in theory and data. I'm here because I hope to make the mental health process a little more transparent. I understand that mental health can be a bit of a black box. You walk in, something happens, you walk out. So my goal here is to provide as much information as possible so people can make risk management decisions that work for them. I'm really happy to be here and hopefully have a good discussion. I'll pass it off to Devin.
You're on
Devin, we
mute.
got you.
Round two. My name is Devin Long. I'm an active duty explosive ordnance disposal tech. I've experienced combat trauma, childhood trauma, sexual trauma early on in my career. So every day dealing with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, cutting, a lot of things that nobody wants to talk about in public. But trying to change that. I'm a proud dad. My faith in God has become a cornerstone for my recovery process and drive to be part of teams like this to help others. So yeah, just here to change culture, kind of break down the shame and ego of talking about this stuff. Show it's okay to be vulnerable, and most of all, it's okay to get help, and it's not okay to be alone. I'm going to pass it over to General Minihan. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. This is Mike coming from Air Mobility Command. My 10 words I practiced. So I am husband to Ashley, father to Adair, Mikey, and Marley, and commander. I think that's actually 11 because I added and commander. You know, I'm really inspired already just by the introductions here. So I'm grateful to be here. I've got 3 lines of effort that I'm working on. I want to eliminate stigma, I want to lower barriers, and I want to increase access and options. All that bundled up is a program we call Warrior Heart. And I'm really excited to learn from you all. I'm already learning the lingo of the forum we're in, and it's a little bit intimidating on these groups and things that we're supposed to click and do. But I'm here to learn, but I'm also here to champion for airmen and your families, and certainly the mission as we get after this. Thank you. Strike, back to you, I think I say.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. So I go by Strike in this context. I'm a maintainer. I'm a graduated commander. I'm a mother of 2, 5 and 6 years old. I'm a joint spouse active duty service member. I'm a T-ball coach. I'm also an active duty member who suffered miscarriage, infertility, severe postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, suicidal ideation, and I faced barriers to care and let stigma get the best of me when it came to getting help when I should have. This is something that is very important to me for many reasons. Before we move into our breakouts, what I'd like to do is invite our panel. The first question that we're going to ask you all to talk about in your breakouts, and you're going to get a series of questions, but I'm going to share a bit, but I'd like our panel to let me know if they have anything else they'd like to share when it comes to the question of, why do you want to be here today? Why are you joining us live on YouTube? Why is this something that's important to you to be here today? If anyone has anything else to add that they didn't share in their intro. Okay. What I'll share from a Fortify the Force perspective and representing some of our team, but personally, I have lost a lot of people in my career. I have had my own experiences with suicidal ideation and struggles with mental health. But quite honestly, it's the experiences that I've had since sharing my own story, and in the effort of sharing a story that I think are very important and why we think these conversations are important. And when it comes to my own journey, I shared my story publicly in a forum that was a mental health campaign at a very, very large level, and had several people that wanted to share those stories with me. And in early conversations after we had agreed to do so, one of the asks back to us, and this was well before Fortify the Force was a thing, was, that sounds great. We would love to hear those stories, but we want to make sure we share success stories. So if you could make sure to vet, these individuals, to make sure that when it comes to mental health, we're really only sharing those success stories. So we're leaning people in the right direction. We're helping them realize that we can have successful encounters with mental health. And quite honestly, I panicked. because my story is messy. I may have been a sitting commander at the time, but my story is ugly. It's messy. I had 6 different first encounters with mental health and failed to get the help I needed, whether it was me running away because I was scared and let the stigma get the best, or because I encountered specific barriers. And all of our team who was working this at a time had messy stories that were hard to talk about, that had really significant hiccups and barriers along the way. None of us could share an experience that was, I went into mental health, I told them what was wrong, I walked away and I was fixed, which is how it felt. And I think there's a lot of people in our team that share that sentiment, that talking about mental health, we say it's okay, but sometimes talking about the messier pieces of it and the more difficult pieces of it are not welcomed or aren't what people want to hear. And we know that that has changed significantly. The other piece of that is we have a lot of people on our team, and we've received questions of, how do we just break the stigma? How do we make the stigma go away? How do we make this just an easy thing to go get help for mental illness or mental health crisis? And something that we all, patients, providers, the command teams kind of in the struggle and working with us, mental health is hard to talk about. It's always going to be hard to talk about. There are things that are incredibly hard to say out loud. Like Devin gave some examples here, and our whole team can relate to that. And as we work through these questions today, something we would encourage you to do, we're never going to turn this into an easy thing to say out loud. Things are going on in your mind that you don't understand or you don't have the words for. And so what I would encourage you to do, and why we're here today, is to normalize this conversation, no matter who you are and who you're talking to not be afraid of the hard parts, to realize that sometimes somebody's going to say something and they aren't going to have the words and it's going to be tricky to get out. They may have a very different perspective and experience than you did, and those things can exist in the same space, and that's okay. And we really just want to understand each other better and hold a space for this conversation, wherever that goes. So JW, I think, is going to share with you all in the chat a series of questions, and you guys are going to see that when you get into your breakout groups. We're going to be following the same prompts and just talking as a panel. And again, you can come back and watch that on YouTube if you're here with us live today. And we just encourage you to have that open dialogue. One of the questions you received in the Mentimeter was just, what do you hope that we talk about today? We would encourage you to bring that into your discussion in the small groups once you get through the prompts as we share those with you, because those are going to be available to you, but you can take that conversation wherever you feel you'd like to. We're going to take a look at some of those results as we talk as a panel as well. But we're just very glad to have you and invite you into this conversation today. So I'll pause there if our panel has anything else they'd like to add, and otherwise we're going to pass it over to Dr. JW to take us into the breakouts. And we, the panel,
I'm watching the people on the panel decide when they're going to share. I want to make sure that if anyone wants to add a little bit, General Minihan, I see you coming off mute, sir.
Yep. Hey, thanks, Jay. Thanks for the note on Memorial Day too. It's an honor to be here with you. Forgive me for not acknowledging you in my opening salvo. Hey, Strike, you set the tone. Let's trust each other enough to tell the truth. Human endeavors by nature are uncomfortable, so that's okay. We'll come at each other with a lot of grace. For our expect it to receive it, and also high expectations to give it. I'm really, and you teed this up perfectly. When I say, here's what I want to learn today. When I say I want to eliminate stigma, lower barriers, increase access and options, the grit underneath each of those things, I would love to hear feedback on whether we're getting after that. I took a journey. I was challenged by a command chief to put a mental health appointment on my calendar, and which eventually wound up as a tweet. And what I thought I was doing for my airmen, I actually learned I was doing for me and my airmen, which was an amazing and probably the scariest the scariest 3 days of my life up until that point. But I would applaud anybody that would give me direct feedback on am I chipping away, at really getting after the eliminating stigma part. I feel that's the cornerstone of this. I feel that's the big mountain, the big challenge we need to slay. I learned this, and I'll leave this, as a transition point here. I have stood on a stage my whole career, especially from my squadron command forward, and said seeking help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And, you know, probably ripped through all the talking points. I meant them. They come from my heart, you know, even though they were probably the standard set, but I could know nothing of the journey until I actually did it myself. And that's the point. You know, the say-do gap, the saying things is amazing, but the actual doing it and experiencing it firsthand, I learned more in those 3 days about myself than I had in the previous 50 something years of my life. It was incredible. So I'm teeing up for learning a lot of lessons on how I can be better, how I can be more on point, how am I really getting after that stigma piece. Over.
Give the panel a moment if anybody has anything else they'd like to share before we kick it off with the breakouts.
I have a quick question, actually. In order to define terms, how are we defining stigma for this conversation? One of the things that I've noticed that has become actually one of the big things that I push for my units is, yes, stigma exists, but would it be easier to reach out earlier? And from my perspective, please reach out earlier. It makes all of our lives a little bit easier, but how does that change people's perspectives on what it means for them to be reaching out? What versus crisis moment versus, hey, things are a little bit uncomfortable. I don't really know what I feel right now. How does stigma change for them?
Yeah. So Ben, I asked JW, and he's nodding at me vigorously. One of the word clouds that we asked you guys to contribute to, and we're going to continue this, so it'll continue to shape as we have more people participate in this, is to bring up and show us the initial responses to that question of what does stigma feel like? And obviously there are many different ways to define stigma, but I would ask you all to take a look at this. Look at some of the larger words, which if you're not familiar with word clouds, that's the more responses, the bigger it is. And again, we'll have more come in. And we've had that discussion as a team. You know, I have people say the stigma's gone, there is no stigma. And we all know that's not entirely true. But when you ask someone to define stigma, those answers are very different. And some of it's internal. You know, it's not always because you think you won't get what you need. Stigma is a tough thing to define, I think. And so as you look at this, we felt the important question, and our team asked us to share it this way, is what does stigma feel like? Because it's that feeling that becomes the barrier in a lot of cases. And I would pause here, you know, if the panel has any comments, thoughts on this piece, and then we'll probably kick off the breakouts just with this in mind. Glad we have a chance to take a look at it before we roll into the breakouts. Any thoughts from the panel on the initial responses here?
Yeah, Strike, I've got one. I see lonely as one of the big words, and I saw it and I choked up a little bit. Nothing has been more empowering through my journey than having someone else explain the way that I'm feeling, and it breaks that loneliness. And I really hope that that's something that we're able to do here today and with these conversations going forward, is just letting people know that you're not alone in these things.
Thanks for that. I can relate to that one. Anybody else on the panel before we break everybody off?
Yeah, I see shame as the biggest one, and yeah, it's that one's very personal for me because I didn't get help for a long time because I didn't experience things that other people experience, so I don't deserve to get help. I should be able to deal with this. Why am I feeling this way? I don't deserve to feel better. So all that, the shame is kind of the root to the barriers, the fears, the anxiety, the depression. So if we can break the shame, we can hopefully start breaking the cycle, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to tag on to what Devin said, you know, talking about one of the biggest issues I had as far as that is concerned is feeling like I'm not worthy of the help that I need because, you know, I didn't suffer a combat trauma. I didn't have it as rough. You know, I don't work the same hours and the same grueling schedule as maintainers or security forces. So I can really understand that piece of it just because, you know, I often feel like there are other people out there that need help more than me. And my issues are insignificant in comparison to what some people go through.
I appreciate that. I got a little bit, honestly, a bit emotional when I saw a few of those words, when you see like same as you guys said, but isolation. And for me, that defined, a year of my life. And although my experiences were, postpartum, I used to hide behind that and say that's just what it was. A lot of it had to do with layers of trauma, things like that. But it felt very isolating to have that kind of noise in your head and to have these, violent thoughts in your mind, quite honestly. And it doesn't look on you how you would expect it to other people. So they, it's unless you know what to say to somebody, and it doesn't feel how I expected it to feel, at least in my circumstance. And I think conversations like this, I had to hear someone else describing their own experience in a video or something like that to really understand or start to understand what was going on with me. And that isolation, once you do have that conversation, you realize, you are so far from alone in these experiences, but the real hard parts of it aren't things we say out loud. And so, I appreciate everybody sharing that in the Mentimeter, because I think that right there is really how we'd like to kick off this discussion, is with that in mind, with the fact that that's how people are feeling in many cases, in the good stories and the tough ones. With those feelings in mind, we're gonna ask you to kick off a few questions, and the rest of you again are going to go into some breakout rooms here for about 20 minutes. We are going to stay here, and again, we're just a little breakout. So those of you on YouTube, you're just going to watch our breakout discussion and be there with us through the journey of that breakout discussion. Our team in Zoom is actually going to go in and have this discussion themselves. So the first question we're going to ask you all to take a look at, and JW is going to share those in the chat for you and give you a little bit of admin. But as you're thinking about it, as that admin comes through, is just when it comes to mental health, what's the hardest thing for you? And from your perspective, patient, provider, command team, multiple perspectives, what are the hard things? What's the hardest thing for you from that perspective? With that kind of simmering in your minds, I'm going to pass it over to JW as he puts you back into some breakouts to have that discussion.
All right, everyone, can I get you to lean just a little bit closer into one another? If you are not on video, this would be a great time to click the start video option. When you get into breakout rooms, small groups, you'll have a bit of time. So let me drop two things in chat. If you open up the chat there, because you're closer to the keyboard, you're probably going to want to do very similar to what the panelists have done. Share your name, where you're located right now, and then a 10-word-ish introduction. When you get through that intro, when you have a sense of who's in the room, now you have some time. I want to foot stomp this. When you are in a breakout session, you are not being recorded. This is your special place. And because of that, I'm going to ask, will you look out for one another? There will be things that get brought up in the next 20 minutes that we need to be humans being over that period of time. The moment you need a hand, there's a button that will show up at the bottom of your screen while you're in breakouts called Ask for Help. One of the FIT team will come straight away to your breakout room. Give me a thumbs up if you all can see the chat with the questions. Now, if you're in gallery view, I want you to look around and wonder who you're going to be in a breakout room with. Right before I click Go Strike, are there any announcements from you? If you give me a thumbs up, I will send them into breakouts.
I would just say, if anybody has a moment and needs to take a moment, again, these are tough conversations. You shouldn't feel obligated to share anything you're not comfortable with. Feel free to turn your camera off for a moment. Your breakout room and your teammates will respect that. Just let them know if you need anything. And again, use that help button. If you need to talk to somebody, we have a lot of teammates on hand who'll be willing to have a discussion. We can set you in a breakout room to chat really quickly. Otherwise, again, I just invite you to listen, to share with each other, and to kind of put your hearts into the listening to other perspectives as much as you do into sharing your own. And again, we're grateful to have you here.
All right. When you're in your breakout room, the chat will go along with you. Let me get you all to wave goodbye. We'll see you back in a few minutes, everybody.
All right, for our panel, in theory, none of us will jump into breakout rooms if we did this right. The Zoom and the technology, as a 20-year maintainer, the reason I'm not touching those buttons. But as we kick off, everybody else is going to jump into their breakouts. We are landing here in ours with our YouTube audience, so we are being recorded, but we are all here today to be able to share this conversation with them. I appreciate everybody's intros. Something I should have mentioned to everyone, but for those of you watching and coming back to watch this later, this panel, other than the FIT teammates, has never really had this conversation with each other. General Minihan and his team, General Minihan has not met these folks. And when I talked to his PA team, something that I asked and offered was if there was anything that you, sir, did not want to talk about, if there was anything that we wanted to have a red line or that was, a line we didn't want to cross, that obviously we would respect that. And we have that conversation with each other as well. Every member of this panel has answered no to that question. That doesn't mean we won't run into something that we say, I just want to pause on that one. But we're here having an open dialogue that was very much unscripted, other than a bit of practice on our own intros, and that we can take that conversation wherever you all feel like it should go. And again, our time is limited with each other, but we're grateful, and any feedback that the audience has, or those things we see that people wanted to talk about that we don't get to, those are things that we will consider and put into future panels. So for now, again, I'll say thank you again to the panel for being here with us. The first question, and we'll just open it up for discussion. We have offered that if anybody is feeling like I have something I have to say and the conversation's going and you feel like I'm going to jump to the next one, we've said, hey, throw the thumbs up or throw something in the reactions. I'll see you, and I'll make sure we do that before we go to the next question. I'm going to kind of be tracking a few minutes for each question so that we have time. And then anytime we have left, we'll take a look at those Mentimeter results on what people hope we talk about today. First question is just when it comes to mental health, what is the hardest thing for you? I'll pass it over to you all for any thoughts you have on that one.
For me, the hardest thing was answering honestly on the computer about being suicidal. It was a little over 8 years from the time I first walked into a mental health clinic before I answered honestly on that question, just because of the stigma on that specifically can, stop PCS, stop deployments, which can just add to the anxiety, depression, and now I'm not contributing to the team. So yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm sure others share that experience. I had a pretty significant panic attack in a mental health clinic at the Pentagon the first time I chose to answer that question honestly. So I know that's one of the most common things that gets brought to us, is how that assessment happens and how we could make that something that makes people feel. Again, it's never going to be easy to answer that question, right? So how do you make that feel like a safe space to be honest in that moment? What about anybody else?
I think there were a lot of hard things that I had to overcome along this whole process, but a little bit more specific, I suppose. Currently, the hardest thing that I'm dealing with right now is that feeling that I'm not contributing, specifically when I have to leave a little early to make a therapy appointment, right? Like I make these appointments at 4 p.m. because it's the last time slot that I can get. I come in early to try to offset that I have this core irrational belief that I'm a hindrance for asking for help and getting the care that I need. And I know I'm more than supported by my leadership and my family, but it's something that I'm telling myself that, because I haven't had it as bad as others, like I don't deserve this extra time to drive home to make a therapy appointment, right? And getting myself kind of through that is difficult.
I'll share a little bit of add-on from the reattack right before we went to our rooms here. This gets to the action of the event, and for me it was, I was offered a way to get into the clinic without highlighting myself. I could have gone out of uniform. They were willing to give me a parking spot, walk me up through the back stairs, that whole thing. And when I describe, what was significant about those 3 days, it was that journey that the Mike Minihan pulled up to the normal parking spot, walked in the front door, went to that went to that elevator that went to that part of the hospital, that sat in that waiting room. And, you know, my name was called out. You know, I sat down at the computer, I did the uptake. I was called back for the verbal portion. And so I described that in a couple of ways. One would be, you know, there is, you know, there's certainly an uncomfortableness to that. And you know, I love the question about the stigma, because I thought that's getting after it. It's, you know, it's the willingness to go forward, and the willingness, and then the understanding of what it really takes to do that versus say it. So that's one aspect of it. The other part of it is, and probably the positive part is once that's over, I mean, the hardest part is over. And then you get to the people that are, as you all described, I thought perfectly, you know, kind of reading back your feelings in different ways, and the goodness can happen. So you know, I think that, you know, that journey is significant, and it's you know, it's an honorable journey, and, you know, but it's one that must be taken. And I thought that was the hardest part. You know, once I got through that, you know, my tweet came out, the action happened on a Monday, the 3 days, the hardest part was over. And then that's where I get to my point. What I thought I was doing for others, I found out I was doing for me and others, because it was liberating, if you will. Over.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And that's something we've all talked about. I was able to get, I think the hardest part of the experience for me was I was able to informally get a lot of help when I was in command and preparing for, again, a mental health campaign. When I realized I didn't know how to tell a story because I hadn't actually gotten the formal help for what I had gone through. When it came time, I didn't get help until formally on the books, until I came back to the Pentagon, and I was having panic attacks and I had no idea what was going on. I walked down to a Starbucks and thought I had COVID because I started sweating profusely and just my heart was beating and I didn't know what was going on. And the act of actually getting the referral and getting the appointment and getting there, I mean, I had times where I did get the, you know, hey, we have a 12-week wait for an appointment. Are you going to be okay waiting that long? And my answer was no. And that was it. And I sat there going, oh, it can't be this hard. And it wasn't because people don't want to help. It's because the system has a lot of difficulty in connecting people to care right now, because there's a lot of reasons why people come to mental health and maybe needed something else, and it's overburdening the system. So I know our team has talked a lot about that. Ben, being a provider, I know we've talked a lot about how do we create a system where people get to the right thing first, where we can ease that system when somebody is in some sort of acute distress, so that just the journey of getting face to face, as you said, sir, once you get there, it's a massive relief. But getting there can be, for me, that was the hardest part, is once I finally decided, I'm going to do it. It was a pretty tough journey to actually getting to that point for me personally.
Yeah. And that's, you know, now put my commander hat on, you know, and answer the question differently. You know, patience for what you just described, you know, my commander patience connecting people to care. When you can see the righteous place and you hear the stories where, you know, everybody's trying hard, but there's just a miss, you know, it's just missing. It's missing on the timing. It's missing on, you know, the actual need. It's missing on the priority of others. You know, it's the patience to sit and try to work through those things. So, you know, I hope some of you all have some feedback for me, because you know, we're working diligently on it, but you know, the diligently on it and aggressively on it is still months and months and years to get this to a much better place. So my commander answer is a little bit different than my Mike answer. Over.
Sure. And I'll pause in case Jen and Ben, so we can move through the other questions, but I'll pause quickly in case Jen and Ben have anything else on this one before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think I guess I come from this in a slightly different perspective, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people that I feel it's unique to military. I've worked with lots of different populations at this point, but the military specifically has this draw to, hey, I know there's someone who's struggling worse than me. There's gotta be, can you please go help them? And it's like, I would love to help both of you. I don't see why it has to be a one or the other. But it's such a pull from the military. We say, hey, you're here because we need you. We're here because America needs you. You're here because you are the one to do your job. We have this push so strongly towards get after the mission that it is hard to hold both of these concepts in mind of also I need to take a pause. I need some version of a rest day or some sort of recovery option because we're not robots. We can't just push. And it is such an interesting conversation to have because every crew field has a different perspective on it. Depending on your expectations, you have different perspective on it. You may be getting flight pay, so you don't want to have to lose that. All sorts of different things that push the military towards this concept of, I think I got this, please go help my battle buddy. And sometimes the best way to help your battle buddy is to take care of yourself. And that is a very tough feeling for a lot of people that I've noticed.
I already kind of mentioned that the hardest thing for me was feeling like, I didn't have problems as worthy, like Ben was saying, as other people. So I found it very difficult, but I also find it very heartbreaking to watch some of the career fields just feel like they cannot get the help they need because they'll either lose their ability to arm or lose their ability to fly. And so they're convinced that they cannot seek help. And it's just heartbreaking to see those people just struggling with what they're struggling and not be able to feel comfortable going and asking for help.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so I'm going to ask, this is a bit of a piggyback question, not necessarily an entire conversation, but given that, because it's very similar, is there one thing that you wish you could say or that you wish you could say, and, whether that's to a particular demographic or to someone with a different perspective or background, is there one thing that you wish you could say or that you'd like to share if you could?
So kind of in line with a lot of what we've talked about so far, I think the one thing that I wish I could tell everyone is that it doesn't matter what your catalyst is. It doesn't matter what brought you here or to the point where you've decided that you want or need some help. I struggled for a long time, like many of us did, feeling like, I've got teammates who've been shot at, who've lost parents, who have lost children, and I haven't had those experiences. And from my perspective, they're able to handle it, to keep it together and to do what they need, but I can't. And there's a lot of guilt and shame in that conversation. And what I wish everyone could understand is that none of that matters. The only thing that really matters is being okay, or at least being on the road to okay, regardless of what brought you there.
I think that kind of goes in line with if we can get everybody to be comfortable enough just to be honest, and you can see that the people that are excelling may in fact not be okay, and that's a coping mechanism that I often use too. Nobody would have asked what was wrong or what was really going on, or known that really feeling on the inside, the emptiness, the loneliness, the worthlessness. Didn't matter how much I was succeeding. It was just completely empty. And yeah, just not having the purpose. But like looking back on it now, all the pain and the struggles, like I count it as a blessing, because I've been able to connect to so many people now, whether it's through the combat stuff or mostly through the childhood trauma that nobody wants to talk about in the military that brought us here. So and a lot of times just talking to somebody that's been through the experience, like we said before, like that works out better than even going to mental health oftentimes. So
Thanks, Devin. Anything else before we roll on to the next one? I think the one thing that comes to mind for me on that, it used to be, it's not a sign of weakness, all those kind of things. And I think we've started to realize that. The one thing that I think was a struggle for me, and it took me a long time to learn, and I wish somebody had kind of really reinforced this, is that you don't have to, as a leader, whether that's a commander, a shirt, a flight chief, whatever, that you can be a person who values mental health, that helps people through these journeys, compassionate to these things. And you can also be a leader that holds people accountable and that creates a system that is, that you can be war fighters, that you can be intensely dedicated to the mission and also, value mental health. And I think there's a lot of people that struggle with, they won't respect me if, I admit my own suffering, or they won't listen to me if I allow them to get help. Well, now I'm not holding them accountable. And those things can exist in the same space. And I think that's harder than we realize until we're dealing with those very significant scenarios where somebody's undergoing severe disciplinary action and also struggling, or again, you're in career fields where somebody might not feel you are able to be the sharpest edge of the sword if you also are taking care of your mental health. And I think figuring out, telling people at all levels we can exist, those two things can exist together and actually are complementary. That's something I think we still struggle with at times. So I'm going to pass. So our last question that we have on the books, and then we're going to glance at what other folks submitted in that survey at the beginning, is what is one thing you wish would change when it comes to this conversation?
I'll go. If I had one wish come true, it would be to simply look at mental health as just health. And I realize that might be overused, but I think it gets to, basically everything everybody's discussed to this point. You talked about being uncomfortable, and as we transition to this question, and as uncomfortable as that may be, and I agree with you 100%, it's not as uncomfortable as when the mission fails or when we have an extremely negative outcome when it comes to an individual. Those are more uncomfortable things. So, I agree with you that this is exactly where we need to go. They are absolutely compatible, but we in AMC we're using the Warrior Heart, and it's not a program that you go sign up for, but it's simply elevating mind to the same level as body and craft. So mind, body, craft, are on the same plane all day long. We take care of our bodies and our craft, and nobody bats an eye when you go to the doctor for something that aches, or a dentist for something that aches. Nobody bats an eye when we do all the training to elevate our craft. So if there was one wish I had, a magic one, it would simply say mind is on the same level as those, and it's okay to go in for, I don't know what's wrong. I just need to talk it out to routine visits, all the way up to, bracketing both ends of the spectrum when it comes to the health of our mind. So, if I were to drive one thing forward, it would absolutely be that, and to not even bat an eye when someone says, "Hey, I'm gonna go talk to somebody about some concerns I have for me right now," and everybody looks at that and says, "That's amazing," because I know that they're taking care of themselves, which means I know they're taking care of me, and vice versa, and we've got each other's backs on that. So that's the one wish I would have. Over.
Thank you for that, sir. I've been in physical therapy for a severe back injury for over 10 years. And I say I'm going to physical therapy. I still get choked up and get a feeling do I say medical appointment, or do I say I'm going to mental health? I'm going to therapy. I'm going to this. And that, I think, big ditto on that one, sir. What else? What about for the rest of the team?
I've got two, and one kind of falls in line with that in a more broad level. We used to do self-aid and buddy care, and now it's TCCC. But the point of that is that, your battle buddy, your wingman might get shot, and you need to know how to stop the bleeding. We don't have that same kind of attitude or conversation about, hey, your wingman or partner or teammate might incur some sort of trauma mentally, and here's how you have that conversation with them, right? So I do wish that there was something more fundamental that could address that. More specifically, and this is kind of a different topic, we'll flip the page. More specifically, I just wish that I could talk to my therapist when I'm TDY. When I'm out of state and I have to change my schedule around to make another appointment some other time, sometimes TDYs pop up kind of last minute, and I don't now this week, this month, or however often I just can't make that. And I can understand like when it comes to prescriptions or medication, that I can't pick up a prescription that's written out of state or along those lines. But if I'm just trying to have a conversation about the stress that I'm feeling or the things that I'm going through, I would just really like to be able to do that when I'm TDY and just doing my job.
Bouncing off that point, there is actually discussion right now of, do we take kind of an army model and say, for this squadron, this is your therapist, and if you go, they go. The Army does a better job at that, partly because they deploy differently than we do. They take their brigade and they just move the brigade. So brigade psychologist goes with them. We don't really do that, but there is a discussion on, is that something that may be beneficial? I don't want to talk too much for my career field, but I personally agree with you that if someone is struggling and they're away from home, and we can kind of expect, hey, if someone's away from home, there's going to be more stress. Why not make someone who knows them go with them? I think that makes sense in a lot of different ways. I actually kind of want to take both points and also add what I would like to see change is that we take a very medical model on mental health right now in the military, in that this is how we reduce risk. What are the risk factors we're worrying about? What are the warning signs? And what if we move more towards that strength-based approach of, let's just, similarly that we provide a gym for people to lift weights, so that if they need to lift a whatever you have to lift depending on your job, I guess, you're not suddenly just trying for the first time, that you have all this experience lifting heavy objects, that you have all this experience and strength that you've built up over time. Can we provide some version of that strength-based approach of, hey, here are the skills, let's just take some time to practice them right now, or here are your mindfulness options. Don't do it when you're stressed, do it when you're feeling great, or taking that time to improve that kind of interpersonal experiences that can provide a huge benefit when there is a crisis, but we don't think about them until there is a crisis. And if we can start providing that earlier on, we're less likely to run into those kinds of problems.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. And I think this conversation gets really interesting, and we've had it in a few contexts when we're really having it with people who've had a provider or helping agency perspective, people who've been through, the patient experience or just struggled and engaged with helping agencies in good and bad and hard ways. And then people who've been in that command team or that leadership structure that are working to try to get people support or working through those more acute issues like a suicide attempt and the recovery process alongside the mission. Those are conversations we've had as a team in some of our working groups, and it's hard. And when this little group of people on the screen was in a larger working group, we had about 40 people come in TDY to have some of this conversation and dialogue surrounding kind of mental health first encounter. It took about 2 days to get through the storming and the really tough, how do we speak this? We're speaking different languages and we have different perspectives, and how do we bring that together to start to understand each other, to start to figure out what are those next steps? And it was incredible, but it was hard. And so I appreciate you all being willing to have some of that conversation here today. The rest of the group is here with us, so I appreciate you all jumping in on us. We probably got carried away just like you did. We just didn't have JW to yank us from a room and cut us off. So we appreciate you all joining us. I'm going to pass it briefly. So we've got a lot that we didn't talk about, and there's a lot that you all shared with us within the, hey, here's what we hope to talk about today, our promise to you. And we may get a chance to glance at that today. We definitely will in the after party for anybody who stays after our scheduled time. But our promise to you is that we're going to take a look through those. We're going to create conversations around those things you all hope to talk about. And we invite you to join us as we continue to do this. And we do this within our focus groups all the time. So we invite you to join us there as well. I'm going to pass it over to JW for a little bit of closing, and then our panel at the very end, we will have an opportunity to just share a brief reflection, which JW is about to take everyone through. So I'll ask our panel to just think about that 1 or 2 sentences of what you're taking away from this as well, while everybody else is sharing. So JW, I'll pass it back to you.
Ma'am, thank you. Can I get everyone who can to click the start video? We're going to take a family photo. Because when was the last time you were on a vacation and said, we have too many pictures with everyone in them? All right, but we wouldn't just do any family photo. I need everyone to reach down to the reactions tab. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen, the bottom of your device. I want you to click reactions. Now, don't select one yet. I'm going to ask you to pick the one that puts into an icon that 20-minute conversation. Don't pick it yet. I'll count down from 3. We'll get everybody to choose their emoji and then smile at the camera. I'll take a photo. If you have selected your emoji, give me a smile with your face. We're practicing. All right, I'll count down from 3, 2, 1. And now I need everyone to look up at the camera. Give me a big smile. Now I need you to click on chat. Friends, as a result of today, you're going to go back into your lives. Before you do, I want to grab a second artifact. We have a family photo, and now I'm going to ask for 1 or 2 sentences. As you reflect back on the time that we've had today, would you type in chat the continuation from this prompt? Because of our conversation. I'm going to ask you to take 20 seconds of silence to finish the prompt. Because of that conversation. And right when you click enter, go ahead and scroll to see what your peers wrote. Ensuring that you have the time to reflect is a cornerstone of this effort. Strike, I'm going to hand it over to you as you want to take anything towards the last few minutes of our time today.
Yeah, so like I said, for our panel members, what we'd invite you to do, again, is just kind of a final reflection, similar, same prompt, but just a sentence or 2 of, because of today, and what are you taking away from this, or any reflections on this? I'll open it up to our panel members, whoever would like to start first.
I'll start. Kind of like I mentioned from the top, I'm really hopeful that because of our conversations today, people feel seen, understood, and encouraged. And I hope that through continued conversations in small groups throughout the Air Force and our society at large, that loneliness barrier will get smaller and smaller.
Thanks, Cody.
Hey, first of all, I'm very appreciative. What I'm walking away with is affirmation. How courageous you all are. So it's inspiring. I'm appreciative, and I say routinely that I'm exhausted trying to keep up with the amazing teammates around me. So this is just another affirmation that your courage guides me, and I'll work my best to keep up with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who's next?
Personally, I feel more supported from this conversation and less alone. And I hope that everyone who's been in this conversation feels the same.
Thanks, Jen.
I'm just hoping we can kind of start the waterfall effect of showing vulnerability, and then that just filtering down to all levels of leadership, to be able to open up. Because once one person opens up, and then people start coming to you, then they open up. So it's just a really waterfall effect. So let's get it going.
Thanks, Devin. All right, last one.
I was taking notes as we were talking. It seemed to me like there's a difference in language between airman leadership and mental health. So I'm taking away from this that I want to try and figure out, how do we start building, what does that language look like? What can a shared language look like? Is it that mental health kind of trickles out? What do our words mean? I understand that psychobabble can be psychobabble. Does it need to come from a leadership perspective and taking in mental health as those consultants to build that language, or does it need to come upwards from airmen? That is my just plan on walking across the hallway and talking to my commander after this. And also, Cody, you brought up the idea of self-aid buddy care, or TCCC now. Talking about common language, the phrase that mental health uses is psychological first aid. And I'm probably going to turn around and see if we can test pilot that with some units here, see if that is something that people are interested in, and move forward as a way that we can start kind of taking care of each other again.
Thanks, Ben. So from my standpoint, and I think from our team standpoint, I'm always grateful. I mean, I come away very grateful from these conversations. I think we talked in our panel a little bit about the isolation, the loneliness that came from, that mental health experience. But I think things like this help our team realize we are not alone in this, that the work we're doing and that the staffs are doing, and that, the providers and all the organizations we're partnered with, that it matters and these conversations matter. And yeah, we can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing these things with us and being a part of it with us. And every time we have one of these conversations, I am just, blown away by, the ideas. Our to-do list, as Ben's saying, our to-do lists always get longer. I'm always taking notes going, there's another one, there's another one. There's no limit to what we can get after when you guys help us, to name those problems, to look at them and to examine them and to share those perspectives. So gratitude and really in awe of your all's ability and willingness to come in and share your stories with us. So thank you for that. And I thank our panel members every time. Again, can't express enough gratitude for you all being willing to do that. Those of you on YouTube watching this later, again, unscripted. And what I mentioned to the panel, there were no real boundaries set. There was no preparation or scripting for this, and you saw that in the dialogue as we kind of winged it going through those questions. But I think those are the kind of questions or the kind of conversations we're trying to have. We don't need a script. We don't need to edit and figure out how something's going to come across. It's messy. It's hard. We speak different languages, as Ben said, and I think what we're trying to do is just figure out that common language and understand each other's perspectives better. We're very thankful for you all being a part of that with us. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to JW. At some point, we're going to transition off the recording and into the after party piece of this. JW, over to you to close us out.
Humans, we are starving for connection while we simultaneously fear connecting. You just did it today. You just did it. I will tell you, one of the reasons I love Zoom is it puts us all in the front row. I can look across the screen and I can make eye contact with over a dozen people right now. And then we craft or create, or we do that thing that makes culture. We grab artifacts. So today we've grabbed artifacts. We have a Mentimeter word cloud. Some of you might want to use that as you initiate conversations at your units. We have the because of statements. We will get those out to anybody who requests. And of course, we have a family photo. So it is 31 after the hour. There are some of you that are already 60 seconds late for the next thing. Before we jump into the happy hour, into the post party of one of these events, I want to make sure, General Minihan, if there's any closing comments, sir, that you'd like to bring to us, and then we will start the after party.
Okay, I'll just reaffirm, you all leading me. So thanks for, being the standard when it comes to courage. Thanks for being the standard when it comes to the honest conversations that we need to have. And then thanks for being the standard for the team I'm trying to keep up with. So very grateful for this venue. My first like this, and hopefully I behaved well enough that I get invited back to another. I look forward to teaming with you all now and in the future. Thanks.
So an after party to a Zoom event. We will not close this room on anyone. For those of you who have to leave, give us an emoji or a wave as you go. For those of you that want to continue the conversation, please go ahead. For those of you who just want to sit back and listen to conversation that goes, we welcome you. But I'm going to click mute on me, whoever the first person is to unmute and share. Maybe we could start with giving voice to your because of statement, either one you wrote or one you connected with. Over to the group.
Hi, I'll go first. I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this. And what I said in the prompt was, let me find. Because of our conversation, I have met great people and brought a wonderful smile to my face. So thank you all.
I'll go next. This is Odie.